Hey everyone, I'm Alexandra Blair of Nine Lives Astrology, and welcome to my Monday morning coffee chat where we talk about everything happening under the sun this week in astrology. We have so many loaded transits this week. We have a Mars Pluto opposition with the sun in Taurus squaring both of those parties. It's a fixed T square that could stir up some tension, some power struggles, maybe a deep push towards some change, especially if something's been simmering and building up for you. We also have the third and final of our Venus-Saturn conjunctions with Venus now stationed direct. It's happening at her degree of exaltation in Pisces and bringing some long threads around love, boundaries, grief, processing, and grace into the braid of this transit. Then we end the week with a new moon in Taurus. It's the second Venus ruled lunation of the month, and it is a chance to set some grounded, long lasting intentions after all of the intensity of this week and frankly, this winter. So join me as we explore what's finally ready to shift and move now that planets are moving and we have some progress moving forward. If you want to start unpacking your chart, you can always book a one-on-one session with me at 9livesastrology.com. Let's get started by looking at some of my favorite comments. 2 weeks ago, I talked about Buffy and revealed that I am watching Buffy for the first time as a way of working with this energy, this Venus retrograde energy. I'm currently in around season 6 and taking it very, very slow because I just want it to last a long time, uncharacteristically. Mrs. Rittenhouse commented, Buffy season 6, of course. Now, just out of curiosity, I should look up the original air dates of season 6, see what the sky looked like then. So many of you commented about Buffy, but this comment from Mrs. Rittenhouse actually had me looking back. As it turns out, Buffy season 6 started airing in October 2001. And in April of that year, just a few months prior, so probably when they were filming the season, Venus was retrograde in exactly the same part of the zodiac she has just finished her retrograde in now. Crazy how cycles line up like that. Astrology is beautiful. Thank you for this comment, Mrs. Rittenhouse. Araceli Salinas says, the Venus-Saturn energy is stirring up bittersweet growth for me. I told a friend how exhausting it feels to be Venusian in a world not always ready for her, and he said, heavy is the head that wears the crown. Those words landed deep. Beauty, love, the act of pouring our honey into others, all of it comes at a cost. And when my Venus gets too dreamy or unbound, that cost is higher. Saturn reminds me to move slower, pour wisely, place sacred bounds around what is precious. It's time to mature my Venus, and yes, the crown is heavy, but maybe Saturn is the blessing I didn't know I needed. This is a gorgeous sentiment. Thank you so much for sharing this with me, and I think it is really fitting. I received this comment 2-ish weeks ago on a video that was about Venus and Saturn's second of 3 conjunctions. And this week we are going to talk about their final conjunction. And in some ways, I think the most beautiful and the most poetic. So thank you so much for sharing this story and all of your thoughts with me. As always, leave a comment on any video if you'd like to be featured in this section. Okay, a rare housekeeping section for me with a quick heads up that in May, I will be increasing my prices. If you are on my newsletter, you will have heard about this every month since January, but in 2.5 years of running this business, I've never once raised my prices, and we all know what's happened to the price of eggs over the past 2.5 years. So the reality is that my mental eggs will also be increasing in price in May. I have been running my business for 2.5 years, although I've been practicing astrology for longer than that and studying astrology for even longer than that. But in that 2.5 years, I have done hundreds, thousands of hours of client work, of business development, of teaching, and more importantly, of learning and developing myself as an astrologer and my craft. And this raise in prices is a reflection of all of that work that I do to improve myself and my craft on a daily basis. For more info about my price increase and when it will happen and what it will look like, you can read about that on my blog at 9livesastrology.com/blog. But in the meantime, if you've been meaning to book a session, now is a really good time to do that. You can also email me at 9livesastrology@gmail.com to purchase a gift card if you want to use one of those at some later date and time. It's important to note that I'll be taking 2 weeks off at the end of May to attend the Northwest Astrology Conference. I'll still be here on YouTube, but I won't be seeing clients. And I might be lighter on social media than I usually am. This is a really important time for me every year where I regenerate energy, and it helps keep me flowing and going through the end of the year and really regenerate and recharge my battery for honestly pretty emotionally intensive client work that I do on a daily basis. During that time, I'm going to be working on something really exciting, which I've teased before. I am developing a new website. When I launch the website, I will have new readings. I'm having a couple of themed readings. That's all I'll say about that for now. But if you want to work with me between now and then, I am teaching one final round of planetary rhythms, which is my planetary transit tracking workshop. The first two rounds of this workshop sold out, so I added one more, and I think it will be the last one that I offer this year. It is a 4-week workshop that we do in a small group, very collaborative setting, and we have a lot of office hours and an online forum. It's been seriously heartwarming to work with all of the incredible people who've signed up for this course, and I'm having such a fun time teaching everybody how I track transits. All right, enough about me. Back to the stars. I want to kick us off by talking about the stuff that's happening with Venus and Saturn this week, including the new moon in Taurus. And then I'm going to separately talk about the Sun, Pluto, Mars drama. They sort of intertwine with each other, but they feel like two different storylines. And I'd be curious to see, based on who your Time Lord for the year is, which storyline you resonate with more. If you don't know how to find out who your Time Lord is, you can check out my video on this very channel coming soon to a theater near you. Otherwise, you can use a calculator online, but that's no fun. Okay, these are our transits for the week. At the beginning of the week, we have the Sun in Taurus squaring Pluto in Aquarius. Remember, we ended last week with the Sun in Taurus squaring Mars in early Leo. So now we open and the Sun is squaring both Mars and Pluto. Mars and Pluto form the opposition and perfect that fixed T-square towards the end of this week on the 26th of April. On the 24th, Venus will conjoin Saturn at 24 degrees Pisces, which is her degree of exaltation. This is a beautiful transit and one that I've personally been looking forward to for a few months. On the 27th of April, we have a new moon at 7 degrees Taurus, and throughout this week, the moon moves from early Aquarius into mid-Taurus. Let's start with the Venus-Saturn stuff. Here is the chart for the moment that Venus and Saturn conjoin. As you see, something really interesting is happening, and the moon is there to witness what's going on. Just like the moon also plays a role in the Mars, Sun, Pluto stuff we're going to talk about in a little bit. When Venus and Saturn meet together on April 24th, it will be at 27 degrees Pisces, which is Venus's exact degree of exaltation. This just puts a little exclamation point on the end of the sentence to say that Venus is in a really, really strong position here. And this is the third of 3 conjunctions that Venus and Saturn have made since winter. First, we had Venus moving direct through Pisces in January, and on January 18th, they conjoined in the middle of Pisces. When Venus stationed retrograde and came back through Pisces, she conjoined Saturn on the 7th of April, and now that she is moving direct again, she will overtake Saturn at her degree of exaltation on April 24th. Together, I have told the story of these two planets on this channel by talking about things like the ballet or the pearl inside the oyster, talking about poise and grace and staying steadfast in a really resolved but harmonious way with our own boundaries and our own sort of carving out a radical self-love and a grace and a forgiveness and a permission to ourselves. This final one has so much resolution with Venus moving direct again and Saturn moving direct again. This is bringing up this morning ritual for me, and that's morning with a U. Like, I'm thinking so much about Victorian morning customs and rituals. In doing some research and thinking about this, I actually found out that in Victorian times, when women were in mourning, particularly for their husbands, but loss of a family member, mourning was seen as specifically women's work. And there were all sorts of rigid customs, and there have been across many cultures and many centuries. But for today, I'm thinking about Victorian mourning rituals where a woman would actually have to be in formal, full mourning for a year after the passing of particularly their husband, but depending on how close of a family member, another loved one. After that, they could go into a formalized period of half mourning where they were allowed to add some color to their wardrobe in very specific, socially approved ways. This is so spot on for Venus and Saturn coming together. It's the social pressure, it's the harmony of the collective. It is the heaviness and gravity of mourning, which is essentially bearing a value out in time in the social sphere for everyone to see, carrying your values in the things that you wear and the rituals you do on a daily basis and the things that you say. I'm thinking a lot about some of the elaborate and beautiful jewelry I've seen that is mourning jewelry, woven hair, jewelry made out of bones and teeth. I was thinking a lot also about Catholic first class saint relics, which are actually enshrined and elaborately decorated and venerated icons that are actually typically pieces of flesh and bone and blood and hair of deceased saints. The idea that someone can carry the weight of the actions they accomplished in this lifetime with grace over into the next lifetime, and that their social legacy can live on after they and their body have passed away is such an incredibly powerful blending of Saturn and Venus's significations here. There are also all kinds of really interesting rituals throughout the globe that I was thinking of in Egypt, India, China, Europe, basically worldwide. There is a custom of professional mourning, hiring professional mourners who would actually show up and perform mourning at funeral customs. And I'll give you one more example from this grief and grieving rabbit hole that I traveled pretty far down this week, which is the concept of sin eating. Now, this is an old custom from Welsh culture and possibly from before that, where meals were placed near a recently deceased person and said to do the work of absorbing all of their sins. And these meals were then ritually consumed by someone who was hired to and paid to take on the sins of the deceased. Now, all of these are pretty morbid examples, you'll forgive me, of the ways that Venus and Saturn can combine. But what I can say for sure is that these two have a real weight together and they have plenty in common. Saturn, after all, is the exaltation ruler of Libra, for which Venus is the domicile ruler. So this recent full moon in Libra might provide a really significant keyhole for you into this Venus-Saturn conjunction if you are struggling to think about how to use this or work with this or think about what it means in your life. You might also think about where Saturn has been transiting in your chart and how any kind of grace and forgiveness and permission and self-love has been recently injected into that place that Saturn has been traveling. Now, both of these planets are going to be feeding into the new moon in Taurus because that moon is ruled by Venus, and she will be here in this place of conjunction with Saturn in Pisces when the new moon happens. The new moon in Taurus is special because the moon is exalted in Taurus and will be conjoining the sun. This is our second Venus ruled lunation of the month, and I am sure feeling it. Admittedly, Venus is my Time Lord of the year, but I'm definitely feeling it. I'm going to try my best not to get emotional while talking about this, but I have been so struck this week by how present friendship has been in my journey this year. The ways that friends can love so easily, the ways that friends can make you feel easy to love and show up for you and support you has been a little bit staggering. It has had that Saturnian gravity to it. And many times I have been in a place of feeling ridiculously hard on myself, of my super critical inner monologue. And I've actually stepped back and thought to myself, hey, if my friends can love me for me, if my friends can see this other thing about me, if my friends can show up for me, then I must be all right. Friendship has been sort of like a correcting factor in this month for some of my unhealthy Saturnian tendencies. While Saturn is transiting my third house, of course, and having Venus interplay has really brought a lot of support and love into my life in places that I didn't expect. And I've cried a lot about that. I can't lie to you. So, thinking about this new moon in Taurus, this would be a really powerful and potent time if you are looking for all of the stereotypical new moon opportunities, which is a time to launch some new project, get started with something, put intentions out there for something that you want to accomplish, or even just stake a flag in the ground and say, this is where I want to go. Even if you have nothing material that you can accomplish or put forth, set some kind of flag in the ground for yourself there. All right, before I shed a tear on my own show, I'm going to move on and we're going to talk about the sun squaring Mars last week, moving into the sun squaring Pluto this week, and Mars finally perfecting that T square, that fixed T square, by moving into an opposition with Pluto. Here's what this looks like in chart form. It is half of a grand cross. It's called a T square, where we have the sun forming this 90-degree angle square to both Mars and Pluto, and Mars and Pluto are opposing each other. This is totally reminding me of a scene from a movie. And usually my references are a little less direct than this, but I need you to bear with me because it is so spot on. Now, this is a corny old movie, but The Big Lebowski has so much to do with what's going on here in this fixed T square. I want you to think about Jeff Bridges as the dude, as our Taurus sun wearing a bathrobe everywhere. When we think about Mars, we think about a character and a person and a figure and an entity and an energy that is hot to trot, ready to go, ready to rip, especially in Leo, supported by the sun's vitality. It's really roaring to get into a fight. And this completely reminds me of Walter from the movie The Big Lebowski. He is ready to pull out a firearm and make a threat if you are going to cheat in his mind at bowling. He's ready to go, constantly having to be talked down, ready to pull out a baseball bat and smash up your car if you're stonewalling him. This is the martial archetype right here. Now, amid all of this, in the movie is this sort of like simmering feud with the Jesus played by John Turturro. This is such a Plutonian dude. They talk about him as a pervert. He is wearing a purple jumpsuit. I couldn't make this more Plutonian if I tried. So the three of them and this little standoff is really what's coming to mind for me here. We have Mars in Leo, which is like Walter, ready to pull a firearm, ready to go, ready to get in the fight, ready to be resolved. Now, the reason this is so perfect is because the sun is mediating just like the dude mediates a little bit of Walter's rage. Not a lot, but just enough to make you feel like the situation isn't totally unhinged, even when Walter is freaking out and waving his firearm all around the bowling alley. The dude is kind of like, come on, everybody, calm down just a little bit. Or when he's getting manhandled into the back of a car and he is about to be questioned, interrogated, but he's really concerned with the status of his beverage. Much like the dude, the sun in Taurus is mediating what's going on between Mars and Pluto in a way that I think is actually a little bit helpful because the sun in Taurus is ruled by Venus and Venus is in such a mature and such a lovely position, exalted in Pisces and conjunct heavy, sober, mature, wise old Saturn. Mars and Pluto are also moving in threes, and this is the third of their oppositions. The first one happened at the beginning of November, around November 3rd. Now, if you're thinking the beginning of November 2024 was when blank happened, maybe you can tie whatever blank is to this transit. Same goes for January 3rd, when they opposed for the second time while Mars was retrograde. Now, that first opposition happened across the Cancer-Capricorn axis. That was, in my opinion, the meanest of the three. Because Mars was so unhappy in Cancer, because Pluto was retrograded back just to the anaretic degree of Capricorn, 29 Capricorn, that one looked the meanest. The one on January 3rd also a little spicy with Mars stationed retrograde, moving back through Leo, headed for Cancer. That was also pretty mean. If either of those are bringing up significant events in your life, this is a cycle you definitely want to pay attention to and think about, because the third is happening this week. It is already beginning with the close of last week, and we are headed into the heat of it that will peak at the end of this week on the 26th. Now, this third and final opposition between Mars and Pluto is the most resolved of the three. Because Mars is moving direct through Leo, where it has some dignity, Pluto also moving direct through Aquarius, and most importantly, that beautiful Venusian sun, just like the dude in his bathrobe, getting manhandled into a cab where he's about to get shaken down, and he's got a margarita and he's saying, "Hey, be careful. There's a beverage here, man. Don't manhandle me." That's what's going on here. Now, I haven't seen that movie in a while. If you haven't, I definitely recommend, but I rewatched so many scenes from it to prepare for this video. And I have to say, Jeff Bridges is just giving absolute Taurus realness throughout that whole movie. So what can you do? How can you work with it? How can you think about what's happening with Mars and Pluto this week? Now, Mars and Pluto in opposition or in conversation is often bringing up issues around control, around manipulation, around ambition, sometimes around open aggression, and sometimes quite transformational stuff is coming up at this time. The fact that the sun is in a Venus-ruled sign is really helpful. And that gives me this strong sense that Venus, while still at her degree of exaltation with Saturn, is available to us to use in these situations that may be feeling really overextended or where there may be power dynamics at play. Using whatever expressions of Venus feel really natural and authentic to you might actually help smooth things over with Mars and Pluto this week. And if you have anything ambitious that you're wanting to launch or accomplish that is deeply grounded in reality and self-reflection, this could be a good time to use the momentum of this transit to push it forth. And the same is certainly true if there is a toxic, sludgy, controlling dynamic that you are looking to break free from. You might actually use these transits like a little bit of a slingshot to help yourself out. Make sure that you rely on Venus. And when Friday comes around, Venus's day is Friday, April 25th. So that would be a good day to reach out to Venus if you want to, in whatever way feels authentic to you. I would offer some honey or some sweets, light maybe a pink or yellow candle, put out some seashells. Sometimes I look at artful depictions of Venus like Botticelli's or Ang's odalisques, and just get yourself in tune with what Venus is asking you to do. She's an ally. The sun in Taurus is an ally in this situation, and both of them are helping give us some grace throughout this week. Okay, we've arrived at the part of the show where I tell you how I, as a pagan, animist, astrologer, human, am going to be using this week. And I am extremely excited to report to you that this week I will actually be opening a very special package that I've had sitting on my desk for over a month. My friend Sarah and I bought 20 talismans. I've never bought a talisman before, but when I opened this email from Idolis Talarum, I clicked out of curiosity. I love to window shop. I saw this talisman and I knew that it was for me. It is conjunct my benefics in Leo. It is a beautiful talisman. I cannot wait to open it, and I will, of course, reveal it to you. It is from Idolis Talarum. More on this next week. Sarah and I elected the perfect day to open it, which is pretty close to the Taurus New Moon. We are definitely using that Venus power to smooth over some of the karate chop energy of the Mars-Pluto opposition. And I will absolutely report back here once I have opened it, and possibly sooner on my Instagram if you want to check that out. I've also been looking forward to this Venus-Saturn conjunction for a really long time, and I am making some sort of a talisman myself. It is just a little reflective token that I'm going to be able to carry with me to remind me of the lessons that Venus and Saturn carry together for me. These two planets are super important in my life, and I've really felt them this month, particularly Venus sweeping in to save me from some of Saturn's lessons in my third house. So I'm going to be making something small to remember this by. All right. I've reached the end of my coffee, and that means that we must be at the end of the show. I hope something in this video has given you clarity, courage, or at least a heads up so that you can, before you, if you know what I mean. If you want personal guidance on how these transits are going to affect you, you can always book a one-on-one reading with me at 9livesastrology.com. Don't forget, my prices go up in May. So now is the moment. If you've been on the fence, take care of yourselves, everyone. I will see you next week.